Thank you.
Morning, everybody. Normally at the beginning of our meeting, we have Michael Jones, who's our committee clerk, to do the administrative tasks, but he can't be with us today, so I'll do my best to do as well as him. I think we first of all need to invite members to declare any interests. Is there anybody who's got any interest to declare?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I
Chair.
I can't hear who's speaking.
It's Tony Conception, Chair.
Oh, Tony, yes.
Would I declare an interest in item 4?
Item 4, Tony, yeah.
I'd like to speak in support of the application.
You'd already like to speak. Okay, because at the moment I've got down no speakers. So I'm very glad. Well, not any speakers apart from the applicant. So that's fine. No other interest to declare? I already announced actually before the video started that we'd had apologies from Councillor Dave Cummings and that we were expecting Councillor Johansson to come in a bit later. Now the minutes of the last meeting, can I move that the minutes be approved? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
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 Okay, I think that's probably everybody. Nobody said they don't agree. So they seem to have been proposed and seconded. The other thing is about the process today, before I actually go on to items 3 and 4. The process today is that our members of the planning committee, they stay on video. We'd appreciate them muting until they want to speak. But everybody else should only be speaking or coming on the video once they've been invited into the meeting. We find this way that we get a lot less technical problems. If you do have a technical problem, we would advise you in the first instance to leave the meeting and then try and rejoin, because that often sorts out the situation. I'm really hoping we won't have too many technical issues this morning, seeing as it is a limited line of speakers today and not as many items as we quite frequently have dealt with in the past. So there are no items of urgent business today, so we can go straight on to item 4, which I have to get up on my separate device again, sorry. Just bear with me because it keeps logging me out. So item 4 is land bounded by Finch Lane and Finch Dene in Liverpool 14. And we have Richard Dene, I'm sorry if I've mispronounced that, Richard, who would like to do a short presentation for us. So can we invite Richard in, please, and bring up the slides?
Great. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Richard.
Perfect.
Carry on.
Good morning. My name is Richard Dene, Town Planner at Prospect Homes, a regional house builder owned by the Riverside Group. I would like to read a short statement in support of the proposals for the site. Firstly, just to recap, the site is a cleared brownfield site that has been vacant for over 10 years following the demolition of housing. Therefore, the principle of developing this site for housing is acceptable based on the site's history. The proposed development includes 31 affordable units, all for affordable rent, which will be managed by the Riverside Group with a new access road and landscaping. The existing adopted highway on site will be stopped up. Confirmation has been received from the Department for Transport. This information is covered in the submitted transport statement with no objections received from highways. The pedestrian access will be restored to Finch Dene and maintained to Princess Drive. New parking spaces have also been provided in accordance with local guidance. Community engagement. In developing the proposals for the site, a programme of stakeholder and community engagement was undertaken to include formal pre-application meetings with the planning officer and design officer, public consultation exhibition attended by residents and local ward councillors. The application was also publicised by the council via letters to neighbouring properties. Therefore, the level of consultation is considered acceptable given the support for the proposed use in local policy. Principle of development. The site is identified as a primarily residential area covered by policy H4 in the UDP, which supports residential development in this location. Residential amenity, to ensure good quality design and the residential amenity of existing and new residents, the scheme has been developed embracing lifetime home standards, currently the new building regs. It has been designed to integrate with the existing community. Houses will front onto the main road and new highway with dual aspect properties at key locations to provide active frontage to the street. A good mix of house types is proposed that responds to local demand, constructed of materials that complement the adjacent built vernacular. The development meets the required separation distances detailed in the Council's SPG. Parking is provided in accordance with the Council's parking standards, and good quality boundary treatment will be provided. Ecology. A biodiversity assessment was submitted to assess the biodiversity value pre and post development in order to meet the 10% requirement increase required. The landscape design provides a biodiversity net gain of 53% of habitat units, which is a considerable increase. 25 new trees will also be planted. Other technical constraints. The site is in flood zone 1, therefore in low risk of flooding with no objections from the EA. There is sufficient capacity within the existing utility network to serve the development. There are no adverse impacts in relation to ground conditions, air quality and other technical constraints. Therefore, to conclude, we consider that the proposal should be supported by the Council as it will deliver high quality development in a sustainable location and are fully policy compliant and will help meet the Council's housing land supply and local housing needs, improve environmental conditions and biodiversity, and will deliver significant economic and social benefits. Thank you for your time.
I had to leave the meeting there for a short time. Has Richard finished what he had to say?
Yes, yes.
So are there any questions? No questions? All right, can I hand over to our planning? Oh, Tony Conception, carry on.
Thanks, Chair. I welcome this application. On behalf of all 3 ward councillors, we welcome the development. This particular site, as Richard has said, has been empty for 13 years, and in that time it's been used as a site for fly tipping. So what Richard has said in relation to meeting the local demand, I think that's quite important. So really it ticks the boxes for me anyway, and for our other ward councillors. So I would urge the committee to support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Are there any other points or questions from the planning committee? Can I hand over to our planning officer, please?
Thank you, Chair. My name is John Hayes. I am the team leader for development management matters in the north of the city. Chair, you've had a very full presentation there by the agent for the applicant, who is Riverside Homes, and you've got a full report in front of you. Chair, there is one particular aspect which I need to draw to your attention, and unfortunately the additional paragraphs that I had provided don't appear to have made the tabled update note. So if you bear with me, Chair, I'm just going to read a couple of additional paragraphs that relate to the principle of development, particularly around the issue of green space. You'll see from the report that there is a brief mention of policy OE11 in that report, but I think it's important for members to understand that this is sort of laid out at the moment as an area of informal recreational open space. But as you've heard, it follows from a previous development on the site, and the landscaping that is there is effectively interim. Nonetheless, if you just bear with me, I will read the various paragraphs that I had for you. So Save UDP policy OE11 requires that permission should not be granted for built development on part or all any green space unless the proposed development can be accommodated without harm to the recreational function of the space, visual and amenity value, relationship to other spaces and any known conservation value. Since the demolition of the flats on the site, grass has grown on the land, with some tree planting having taken place to improve the amenity. The site has been used informally by dog walkers, etc., but is not located in an area identified to be deficient in parkland. In visual terms, the space is considered to be of very poor quality and makes little positive contribution to the wider area, other than through some tree cover across the site, which makes some limited visual greening from beyond the site boundary. The loss of the trees is considered in the committee report, but should be noted that none of the trees are protected and loss has been suitably mitigated. The site is enclosed on 3 sides, with the exception of the frontage onto Finch Lane. Consultation response from MEAS considers that the small urban site is largely of limited ecological value. Having regard to all these matters, it is considered that this open space has very limited value, the loss of which would be outweighed by the wider benefits of the scheme, and the proposal would not there conflict with the aims and objectives of saved UDP policy OE11. So, Chair, apologies for that fairly lengthy additional update, but I think it is important that you as a planning committee understand the various policies that are applicable here. All the other matters, Chair, I think have been properly identified. You'll see from the site plan and the house types that the design reflects that of the surrounding area. The properties are all traditional 2-storey, they all provide adequate parking. There is landscaping to the front of all of the properties in the form of trees and so on. So for those reasons, Chair, and the reasons set out in the report, well, happy with the proposal. Section 106 is payable for open space, but we have offset the requirement in relation to street trees because we're satisfied that the landscaping throughout the scheme provides suitable tree cover across the development. For all those reasons, Chair, happy to recommend approval subject to the conditions and that section 106. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Okay, so can I recommend that the application be approved?
Okay, Chair, do you want me to do the voting in the way Michael normally would do that?
Yes, please.
Okay, so in terms of your vote, Chair?
Agreed.
Agreed. I understand Councillor Conception declared an interest in the site, and that's correct, isn't it? Councillor Helen Thompson, please.
Agreed.
Okay, Councillor Malcolm Kennedy.
Agreed.
Councillor Billy Marrett.
Agreed.
Councillor Mira Wallace. Seems to be on the call, but I just can't see her.
Call at the beginning.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now, Myrna.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I've had some problems getting online this morning. I would like to abstain, Chair. I came into the discussion quite late and I missed the presentation. So on this occasion, I'm going to have to abstain, I'm afraid.
Thank
Okay.
you, Councillor Juarez. I quite understand. Sorry about your technical problems.
Yeah.
And Councillor Lavelle.
Agreed.
Agreed. Sorry about this, but I think I've got everybody, unless there's anybody I've missed out there. That seems to be everyone. Okay, so in that case, the voting is 5 in favour, 0 against and 1 abstention. Thank you, Chair, so that's agreed.
Can we move on now to agenda item 5, which is Unit MSU to Unit 6 and part of service deck, Clayton Square Shopping Centre, Liverpool 1-1QR. And I would like to invite, I hope I said this right as well, Ocean Roberts to present to the committee. First of all, please.
Great. Can you hear me?
I can, Ocean, thank
Perfect.
you.
Great, thank you. Good morning, members, and thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address you this morning. First of all, I'm very pleased to note the positive officer recommendation for the scheme, which, if approved, will result in the reoccupation of a large unit which is laid empty and contributing nothing to the vitality and viability of the city centre since it was vacated in 2019. I'm sure you're all very familiar with Clayton Square Shopping Centre, and so I won't go into too much detail on its location and context. other than to say this is an upper ground floor unit which had previously been occupied by Class Olson. The main access to the unit will be off Parker Street, utilising part of the former Peacock's unit. As your report outlines, planning permission has already been granted for the changes to the shop front. Next slide. The proposal seeks planning permission for the change of use of the unit from Class A1 retail to Class D2 assembly and leisure. The main area will be utilised as an adventure play centre with associated ancillary facilities like a cafe, party rooms, toilets and main reception area. The change of use will create between 40 and 50 new jobs in the city centre and will provide both residents and visitors with a fantastic new facility. Next slide. Having originated in Australia in 2012, Flip Out, the proposed operator, are probably the UK's leading trampoline and adventure play operators. The unit will include activities such as trampolining, ninja tag, inflatable play and soft play areas. At the heart of the operation are some key values. First and foremost, they want to see children and families active, thereby improving physical, social and mental health through fun, challenging but safe activities. They will also want to be as open and inclusive as they possibly can where the medical advice allows. They work with local groups to organise specific activities and events for those in the community that are less fortunate and where the issues of weight and mental health can be more prevalent. They also have specific sessions for children with autism and disabilities at a reduced rate and include free access for carers. Whilst the full detail of the setup for this particular unit hasn't been fully drawn up, the company's key values will be at the forefront of the design. Next slide. From a planning policy perspective, national policies, along with both the adopted and emerging Liverpool local plans, are fully supportive of the proposal. They want to see empty units being reused and encourage alternative uses which support the main retail function of the city centre. Whilst the proposal would see the loss of a small section of primary retail frontage, it is within the acceptable range and outlined in policy, and it's considered that the overall gain from a wider city centre perspective more than makes up for this. As we've heard in the news over the weekend, obesity is a significant issue for the UK as a whole. Liverpool, unfortunately, is no different, and according to the Liverpool Clinical Commissioning Group, nearly 2/3 of Liverpool's population are overweight or obese. We firmly believe that encouraging physical activities such as this in a fun and engaging environment can be a significant tool in helping to reduce this figure. Next slide. In conclusion, therefore, the proposal is considered to be compliant with national and local planning policy in that the use would enhance the vitality and viability of the centre, bring more jobs to the centre and significantly help address physical and mental health issues. As a result of this, it is considered that the planning balance is in favour of the proposal, and I would respectfully request that planning permission is granted accordingly. Thank you very much.
Have we got any questions for Robert? Yes, Helen Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation. I really welcome the information that we've got in our papers about your provision for people with disabilities in terms of access and the toilets and all that kind of thing. So excellent for parents and for staff. And a note in your presentation, you say that you will have specific sessions for children with autism and disabilities. Okay. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit more about that. How many sessions, what exactly they will involve, those kinds of things, please.
The sessions are generally once a week as planned sessions. However, I'm sure the operator would be happy to put on specific sessions, but those sessions are specifically designed to have no or low music levels. They are sessions with low light levels, so children with autism they sometimes suffer with difficulties in those kind of loud and environments that they don't they can relax a little bit more, enjoy it a little bit more. And then for children with disabilities, then their specific sessions with carers, they can provide that level of individual sort of sessions at a reduced rate.
Thank you. And I just wondered about the general sessions for everybody. Is there any provision there for children with disabilities who may not need the special sessions but may still want to play with everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one because the operator's terms and conditions require that provided or allow that provided your GP or your medical professional allows you to undertake these kind of activities, that they will definitely seek to make sure that you are included in any session available.
Thank you.
I'd like to add that I know that Liverpool's declared itself an autism-friendly city, so it's good to hear that you are providing specialist sessions. Are there any other questions? Let me hand over to our planning officer to comment on the presentation and discuss issues. Fergal.
Chair, thank you very much. Fergal McAvoy, team leader for City Centre Development Management Team. Chair and members, you've got a detailed report in front of you today, and you've also listened to a very informative presentation where all the issues in relation to this application have been considered. Previously stated, the main element, the main play area of this application would be on the former upper floor of the Class Olsen store. The ground floor unit formerly occupied by Class Olsen would remain as within A1 normal retail. So in effect, the upper floor becomes landlocked, so to speak. It would be accessed via an escalator and lift from the former Peacock store, which adjoins the unit on Parker Street, and it also includes second floor back of house operations. Chair, no objections have been received to this application. As I said, you've a detailed report in front of you where all the issues in relation to principle of a non-A1 use in the main retail area, noise and an amenity changes, or in fact no changes to the external appearance, highways and inclusive access are detailed within the report. The only reason this application is in front of you today because it involves a change of use for an area in excess of 1,000 square metres, and therefore is subject to a requirement to provide street trees, in this case 3 street trees, which the equivalent of approximately £13,500. Chair, this application is supported by your officers, subject to the applicants entering into Section 106 agreement. So unless members have any questions on the contents of the report or issues that are arisen from the presentation.
Does anybody have any questions? No, so I'll move on to move that the recommendation be approved. Is that agreed?
Thank you, Chair. Just taking the votes in the same order as last time. Can I have your vote, please, first, Chair?
Agreed.
Agreed. This time, Tony Conception, please.
Agreed.
Okay. Helen Thompson.
Agreed.
Malcolm Kennedy.
Agreed.
Billy Marrett.
Agreed.
Myrna Juarez.
Agreed.
And Anthony Lavelle.
Anthony?
Agreed. Yeah, got that one. Thank you. So that's 7 in favour, none against and no abstentions. So that recommendation is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And can we now move on to agenda item 6, which is the former Derby Arms Public House, 86 West Derby Road, Liverpool 6 9BY. And can I invite Paul Neal to speak for the applicant, please?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Paul. I can hear you.
Good morning. Hi, just a brief presentation from myself this morning, just to really highlight where the application is, just for those of you that don't know. So the
Would you like to carry on, Neil?
yeah, sorry.
Neil.
Yeah, so the site is just outside the city centre, about 1.5 miles. It sits approximately 100 yards away from the Olympia listed building, and previously the site housed the Derby Arms pub. Next slide, please. After a considerable amount of time as a public house, it came into disuse, and for a number of years it lay empty. It then got quite heavily vandalised and was set on fire in 2013, with the building being demolished, and predominantly became a great eyesore on a major traffic route through into the city centre down West Derby Road. Next slide, please. Our proposal is to erect a 3/4 storey building with 27 apartments, self-contained. As you can see from the slide, there's 21 one-beds with 5 studios, provision for amenities on the ground floor, cycle storage and some car parking. Next slide, please. And we propose to use high-quality architectural details with a brick that is in keeping with the local context. Next slide, please. And we hope the development will bring a great uplift to the area and actually improve what is a major route into the city centre and provide a better view basically than what's there at the moment on this developed site. Thank you very much.
So we don't seem to have any more further speakers registered to speak, so I'll ask the case officer to comment on the presentation and summarise the issues on this application.
Thank you, Chair. Again, you have a full report, and obviously you've had the opportunity there for some visuals. So this proposal, as you've heard, is to develop the site of the former Derby Arms with a 4/3-storey block of 27 flats. As you've heard, it's adjacent to the Grafton and the Olympia site. It's separated from the two by a substantial car park. I'll just take you through the various issues that are set out in the report, because there's quite a number of issues I think members need to be aware of in relation to this development. In terms of the principle, we've also, as officers, and you as a committee, are assessing the loss of the public house, which, although it's gone, this application is for retrospective consent for that element of it. I don't think that's a significant fundamental issue. More importantly, however, the addition of residential accommodation in that location does need some sort of some thought and consideration, particularly in regard to what we know as the agent of change principle. And there's quite a detailed narrative in your papers that talks about that issue. Essentially, the agent of change principle means that where you're introducing new development, you shouldn't affect the introduction of that shouldn't affect existing businesses. Now, clearly, you've got the Grafton rooms very close nearby, and you'll see from the report that we have had representations made. In terms of your officer's approach to this, we've obviously shared this with colleagues in environmental health. They've considered it carefully. There's various noise reports submitted with the application which have been considered, and colleagues in environmental health are satisfied that with the acoustic measures being put into place, the development would be acceptable and would provide a suitable level of amenity for the future occupants of those flats. I think it's also important to point out, as you will have seen on the plan, that there are actually other residential properties already in that area. So this is perhaps slightly different to some of the other examples that this committee is familiar with, where this potential tension between existing uses late night uses and new residential comes into play. So I think we're generally satisfied that in this location the new residential can be accommodated without adversely affecting the operation of the current Grafton rooms in Olympia. In terms of design, Chair, you'll see that it's a 4-storey block, dropping down to 3 storeys. We've had careful regard to the interface distances with those properties on the opposite side of the road and at the rear. We're now satisfied that the overall scheme provides suitable interface distances and a suitable design for that site. We've also had regard, Chair, to the impact on the heritage assets nearby, and obviously that's the main one there is the Olympia. And again, the report sets out the issues in some detail, but suffice to say that we are satisfied that it would not have any particular harm. In terms of residential amenity, again, just picking up on the earlier points, we're satisfied that the relationship provides a suitable amenity, both for future occupiers, but also those existing occupants nearby. In terms of accessibility, you'll see from the report that there are 2 fully accessible units, slightly below the 10% that we're looking to achieve through the local plan. But again, having regard to the current status of that local plan, we're satisfied with that. In relation to issues around parking, again, there is quite a detailed narrative around there. There's only 6 parking spaces associated with this, but colleagues in highways are satisfied with the overall provision, particularly given the location of this site on the fringes of the city centre and the substantial opportunities for other forms of travel, particularly bus and so on. And then finally, Chair, obviously this is subject to a Section 106 agreement, and you'll see from the table there that they're providing full Section 106 contribution, both in relation to public open space and to street trees. So subject to that Section 106, Chair, and the various conditions set out, your officers are happy to recommend approval. And again, if there's any further questions that members may have, I will be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Do I have any questions? Or I move to recommend that this application as amended be approved. Is agreed.
Thank you, Chair. Taking the vote in the same order, please. Can I have your vote first, Chair, please?
Agreed.
Councillor Conception.
Agreed.
Councillor Helen Thompson.
Agreed.
Councillor Malcolm Kennedy.
Agreed.
Councillor Billy Marrett.
Agreed.
Councillor Myrna Juarez.
Myrna Juarez, can you come in to vote, please? Can you come in to vote now, please?
Yes, sorry, Chair. I didn't realise I was on mute. I'm going to vote against.
Okay. And Councillor Anthony Lavelle, please.
Agreed.
Agreed. So we have 6 in favour of the recommendation, 1 against and 0 abstentions. So that recommendation is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. And can we now move on to the next agenda item, which is land near Lightbody Street, Liverpool 5. I haven't actually got a postcode here. And it's to install a 8.9 metre telecommunications mast for the railway. So we've got a brief presentation. We don't have any speakers, so I'll ask the case officer to comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't propose to say a great deal on this at all, other than a reminder that this is for the installation of telecommunications equipment. However, this differs from the normal telecommunications applications that this committee is very familiar with, insofar as it provides infrastructure for the Mersey rail system and their communication system. So this is slightly different from the normal telecommunications mast. You've already considered a number of these over the last few months. I think this is the final one of the dozen or so that were submitted a number of months ago. You can see from the plan where it's located. It's within the general environment of the railway. It's close to industrial properties, and therefore, in terms of the visual impact of it, it's seen against that background and within that context, and your officers are satisfied that it would not have a harmful effect in terms of wider residential or visual amenity. Happy to answer any further questions, Chair.
Any questions? Well, I don't see any questions coming up on the screen, so can I move that the recommendation be approved? Is that agreed?
Thank you, Chair. So once again, can I have your vote first, Chair, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Conception. Councillor Helen Thompson.
Agreed.
Councillor Malcolm Kennedy.
Agreed.
Councillor Billy Marrett. You got, sorry, did you vote there, Matt, Billy?
Agreed.
I got that now. Councillor Myrna Wallace.
Against?
Against, okay. And Councillor Anthony Lavelle. Agreed. So we have 6 votes in favour of the recommendation, 1 against, 0 abstentions. That recommendation is approved. Councillor Wallace, do you want your dissension to this, your votes recorded for both this and the previous one?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Chair.
We move on now to agenda item 8, which is Prince's Court, 6 Croxteth Road, Liverpool 83UJ, and it's to change and upgrade the existing telecommunications space station on the roof. So we have a brief presentation, but no speakers, so I'm going to hand over again to the case officer on the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. It's Stuart Clark here, team leader of the South team. You should have some images coming up on your screen soon. Yeah, this is a resubmission of an application. There was an application for 2 larger masts on the roof of this flat block that were refused in December last year due to their impact on the wider conservation area and the listed park behind. It's a relatively modern flat block, and the scheme that was refused was 2 larger masts. The applicant's gone away and has just used the existing mast frame, which is already there. So there's no increase in height to what exists at present, and all it is a slightly wider antennae system on the top. If you could just flip onto the next one, that would be great. So that's the difference between that sort of pale blue. That's really what the impact is. As you can see, it's a relatively modern flat block. Government guidance is to try and locate masts on buildings wherever possible, so it complies with that aspect of the guidance. The scheme's been fully assessed by the conservation specialist, who raises no objections. Historic England raised no objections, and the Garden Society, the Victorian Garden Society raised no objections. So we're happy that this isn't going to have any wider detrimental impact, and is the optimum location to upgrade the existing mast. So we're happy to recommend approval, but happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Are there any questions? I don't see any. So I'd like to move that the recommendation as amended be approved. Is that agreed?
Thank you, Chair. Just taking the votes in order. Can I have the Chair, please?
Agreed.
Tony Conception.
Agreed.
Helen Thompson.
Agreed.
Malcolm Kennedy.
Agreed.
Billy Marrett.
Agreed.
Mina Wallace.
Agreed.
And Anthony Lavelle. Okay, so just taking that, the voting is 7 votes in favour, 0 against, 0 abstentions, so that recommendation is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And can we move on to agenda item 9 now, which is 63 Lorne Street, Liverpool 7, OJP. And it's a house of multiple occupation. We have a brief presentation. but no speakers. So I will ask the case officer to comment on the presentation.
Thank you again, Chair. So you'll see from the report that this is an application. On this occasion, it's for the retention of a 7-bed house in multiple occupation. You'll see again that this has been a property that has been converted for a number of years. According to the applicant, it's been in excess of 10 years. The reason that that's important is they could, in theory, apply for what's known as a certificate of lawfulness, whereby they provide evidence to the council as to the continued use of it. And if it was established that it was beyond 10 years, on the balance of probabilities, then the council would not be able to take any enforcement action. Nonetheless, they have decided that it is appropriate in this particular case to regularise it through a planning application, because in particular they are persuaded that the proposal of itself satisfies your policies in relation to HMOs, and you'll see from the report that your officers concur with that. You'll see that the overall accommodation, the schedule of accommodation demonstrates that all the various rooms are compliant with the policies set out in the UDP and draft local plan, and provide a suitable level of amenity. Chair, obviously you as a committee are familiar with all the issues around HMOs and their impact on communities, but I think as in many occasions your officers are satisfied that this does comply with policy, and we have recommended approval for the reasons set out in the report. Happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Do you have any questions? No? Well, in that case, then I will move that the recommendation be approved. Is that agreed?
Thank you, Chair. Just doing the votes again. Can I have your vote, Chair, please?
Agreed.
Agreed. Councillor Conception.
Agreed.
Councillor Thompson.
Agreed.
Councillor Kennedy.
Agreed.
Councillor Mowat.
Agreed.
Councillor Juarez.
Agreed.
And Councillor Lavelle.
Agreed.
So we have 7 votes in favour, 0 against and 0 abstentions. So that recommendation is approved. Thank you, Chair.
We now move on to agenda item 10, which is East Prescot Road to the south of Springfield Park, Liverpool 14 5ND. And this is a 20-metre high column with all the antennaes and dishes and boxes, although we don't have to give permission for the boxes. So again, we have no speakers, so I will ask the case officer to comment on the presentation and summarise the issues.
Thank you, Chair. Again, an application type which you and the committee are very familiar with. Let's just try and get some images on the screen before I continue. You'll see the location there opposite the park. It's on a substantially wide corridor in the central reservation. It's seen against that backdrop, and at the end of the day, it's simply a matter of judgment as to whether or not this type of equipment would have an adverse impact on the wider visual amenity of the area. As you can see from the report, your officers are satisfied that in this particular case, given the context, given the backdrop, etc., it would not, in your officers' view, have a harmful effect on wider visual amenity, and for those reasons we have recommended approval. The issues around public health and so on again are referenced in the report, and again they are matters which you and the committee are familiar with. Happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Are there any questions? Again, I don't see anybody indicating, so I'm going to move that the recommendation be approved. Is that agreed?
Thank you, Chair. Just taking the votes again, same order. Can I have your vote, Chair, please?
Agreed.
Councillor Conception. Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Agreed.
Councillor Kennedy.
Agreed.
Councillor Mowat.
Agreed.
Councillor Juarez. Just unmute, please, a minute. No, you're still on mute.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Lavelle, please.
Agreed.
Thank you. So for that item, we have 7 votes in favour, none against, no abstentions. So that recommendation is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Now move on to item 11, which is Thornycroft Road, Liverpool L14 OEW. We have a brief presentation, and the applicant is also here and wants to address you in support of the application. So can I invite you, James? I'm afraid I'm a bit fuzzy on how to do this. I think else to address us, please.
Hello?
Yes, hello, James. Come in, please.
Yeah, James O'Hennicho. First of all, I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to address the committee. I just want to give a little bit of background and context as to why we are where we are. So, firstly, the property has been a family home for myself and 6 family members for over 40 years, and we originally renovated under permitted development for my mother, but due to unforeseen circumstances, we changed the use to a HMO. So I wanted to address some of the councillors' objections. So the first thing I want to talk about was when you talk about money-driven investors with no accountability. This has been a complete family endeavour. We did consult with all residents and left details and contact details when any major work was done. Also, there's been a big focus on using local trades and locally sourced materials. The point on the noise and health and well-being, now I'd be naive to say that there will be no noise disturbances at all, but what we have done is try to reduce this as much as possible. So using, investing quite heavily in insulation and noise cancelling materials, and also building a good rapport with prospective residents. So we do have 7 people wanting to rent out the property. So went with them. We've got the references and so on. I'm vetting them personally as well. And also the property has been completed to a high standard. This should kind of reflect the type of people using the property as well. With relations to the population density, and I'm aware of the challenges that this does bring, but as I've stated before, there was 7 people in there, which 6 of us did actually drive cars as well. I'm a secondary school teacher, computing teacher, and I know the importance of e-learning, and for that reason I've actually installed superfast broadband inside the property, and also included additional recycling bins. So we've got 2 recycling bins and 2 waste bins as well. So when the property is vacant, we would look to let it out as a holiday let. So again, bringing in more revenue for the local economy. The point on the transient and less community cohesion, I was quite disheartened by this objection. I know Liverpool is a very open city. We run capital of culture, and we run it by having an open kind of policy and attitude to a wide range of people, including young professionals and students. Liverpool has a very strong student community, and their contributions to development in Liverpool cannot be understated. I know that these type of developments can harbour some crime, but also what we have done is put in place to try and minimise that. So monitored alarms, double glazing, composite doors, front and back, security lights and CCTV are all in the property to help minimise that. And then in relation with the UDP policies, there is a secure garden space to the rear of the property with clothes drying, gardening and relaxation available there, and there's ample opportunities for bike storage outside and inside of the property. Thank you for your time.
James, and have we got questions for James? Yes, Councillor Malcolm Kennedy.
Yeah, I noted the comment about holiday rent. HMOs do cause problems, but many HMOs don't. And there are different ways of doing holiday rents, and the so-called party rent. So I was a little bit. I'd like a little bit more explanation of what you're intending around holiday rents.
Yeah, of course. I have explained that this was a family home. It is still a family home. This is a short-term thing, but for the next 5 years until I can get my mum back from where she is at the moment. So even though I know the instance with family rent, party rent, that would not be the case. I've invested too much personally to have this kind of a party house for people to come and kind of trash it. We renovated it to a standard where I'd want to live in there myself. So holiday rents, party lets, that's not an option for me. It'd be for people want to come and take the culture of the city in, come and see the lovely sights of it. It wouldn't really be for parties really.
Parties, sightseers and tourism.
Sorry, could you say that again, sorry?
It's not parties you've made clear, James.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Okay. Yeah. So we have Councillor Abdul, who's the local ward councillor, who has asked to address us objecting. So Abdul, would you like to come in now?
Thank you very much, Councillor Owen. I really appreciate that. Thank you to the committee for giving me the opportunity to address the committee. I am one of the local councillors. Myself, Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Smerda. We've been working really hard in improving the area, working with residents to safeguard the amenities around the area. However, what we tend to find in this particular area is that the impact of HMOs far outweighs the benefit that they bring, both economically. So we have a 2-3 months of the year where local businesses are affected due to the mass immigration of residents in that area, which makes businesses less sustainable and drive the businesses to become more of a takeaway based, which again bring about their own problems. So the likes of a hairdresser, the likes of a post office, the likes of core services that the community will rely on become unviable for such areas. Furthermore, I believe that the impact of the crime and the perceived crime and also antisocial behaviour has a great burden on both the mental well-being and the residents who are currently living there. I believe this is contrary to the NPPF paragraph 127, which obviously takes into consideration the perceived crime, and it gives a material planning consideration to that. So I would urge the committee at least to consider refusing it based on that, which is a strong enough argument. Also, again, on the economic level as well, the impact on local residents. We see that we're not just going to be looking at one here. We are adding to the pre-existing HMOs. We, from Gainsborough Road, if those members who are familiar with my ward, from Gainsborough Road all the way to Cranbourne Road, in the last 5 years, we have had no less than 80 HMOs. That is an increase of minimum from a 3-bedroom to a 7-bedroom. That gives us a population of 560 individuals. Okay. Had they not been a HMO and only remained as a 3-bedroom, and it would only be 240 individuals living in that area. That is a difference of 320 individuals that we are adding to this area. Had this been a planning permission to construct a accommodation for 340, there would be seriously a lot more need and requirements on the developer to provide. However, obviously in planning terms, we might not be able to demand this, but what I will, as I said to you, refer you back to is the impact, the crime, the intensity of on services such as bin collections, such as street cleaning, which all are part of the material planning I would submit. Now, the officer has put a lot of emphasis on that this will have not have any impact on the community. I would say that that is a personal view and not a materialistic view. And I would urge the committee to at least have a virtual or a actual walkabout, which will demonstrate to yourselves that this issue is serious enough for you to put some merit and weight behind it in planning terms. So I urge the committee to reject this application based on this and based on all the comments that my colleagues and I have already submitted and you have in front of you. Thank you very much.
To Councillor Kadir, are there any questions for Abdul? Well, I don't see any, so I'm going to hand over now to our case officer.
Thank you again, Chair. Chair, before I respond to some of the comments from Councillor Kadir and pick up on the particular points around the application, can I first report a late representation from Councillor Nicholas, which has also been supported by Councillor Smader. The objection picks up many of the points already articulated by Councillor Kadir, but I do think it's probably important that I just take you through what's written down here. So bear with me. The Picton ward is currently being saturated with HMOs and is putting pressure on LCC and resources. Increased population density has placed a greater demand for infrastructure such as waste, street cleaning, on-street parking, water pressure problems, etc. While HMOs are beneficial to many groups, including students, young professionals, etc., there does seem to be an aggressive targeting of the area which has driven out many people from the community and family homes. Residents continue to tell us of their frustration and how they feel even the consultation process is a tick box exercise. Residents have expressed to us many times, which we have represented to this committee presenting our objections. We feel the committee and planning department seems to not consider our views which we present on behalf of the community. Developers and investors don't live in the area, so don't seem to be concerned about the environmental, psychological and community impact of HMO on local residents. High concentration of HMOs clustered in this small area has forced residents to leave because of being sandwiched by HMOs. A typical example is items next on the agenda. They also add that the dormers detract from the character of the area and actively contribute towards a number of problems to the local community listed below, and these are noise and disturbance which will have a negative effect on health and well-being, blocking the sun from the gardens, higher proportion of transient residents potentially leading to less community cohesion and undermining existing community services, areas of higher HMO concentrations becoming less popular with local residents, a proliferation of properties vacant at certain points of the year, and subsequent impact on crime, local business viability as a result of the number of properties temporarily vacant for long periods, and therefore urge the committee to refuse this application. Can I also add, Chair, that this representation, both from Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Smader, also relates to the next two items on the agenda, but I'll make that point again when we get to those two items. Chair, obviously this is a matter that you and the planning committee generally are very familiar with. The concerns that have been expressed by Councillor Kadir have been expressed on a number of occasions in relation to very similar applications, particularly in this part of the city. We've, as officers, have talked you through many of the issues on many occasions, and the reasons why we recommend that applications for these type of proposals are recommended for approval. Just picking up on some of the things in the report, Chair, just to emphasise them again, the proposal, in your officer's view, complies with policy in terms of its internal space standards. The particular concerns around the wider social cohesion and the cumulative impact of HMOs on an area has been recognised by your officers and is a matter that we are trying to take forward through the local plan process. But again, you'll see, Chair, that in paragraph 1.7, the policy H11 that we currently have cannot be triggered until such time as there's an Article 4 made in relation to that area that also controls those smaller HMOs. And in addition, Chair, obviously we can only apply limited weight to that policy given where we are with that local plan. It's a point that I've made and other officers have made on a number of occasions. Obviously issues around highways and so on and residential amenity, again, are familiar to you. They are matters ultimately of judgment. But as you know, Chair, we as officers consider that it is difficult, given the policies that we currently have, to refuse planning permission for the reasons that are being articulated by the local ward councillors. And it's for those reasons, Chair, that are specified in the report that we are recommending approval, again, in relation to this particular application, subject to the various conditions. But of course, I am happy to answer any questions that members may have. Thank you.
So, Councillor Kennedy has a question.
Hi, John. Fully understand what you're saying there, and we keep on going on about Article 4 directions. We are trying to improve the standard of these properties, and it'd be interesting if you could say what we could put in place to deal with some of the fears within the current application. For instance, I'll reiterate my question about party letting. I know that in the Airbnb system, for instance, you can ban parties from your premises if you're letting out properties for Airbnb. It would be a concern for me that potentially that people could hire this and use it not as a dwelling place, but as a base for something else. I fully understand owners who have a property or inherit a property and they find it difficult to sell, and this is a route they go down. But however, I was just wondering whether there could be any condition put in there that would protect the property from being misused in that way.
It's a very interesting question, Councillor Kennedy, and I'm not sure my answer is going to address it perhaps as thoroughly as you might want. The suggestion of it being used as an Airbnb sort of holiday let is not something that's referenced in the planning application, so that information is new to me. However, the planning position will be the same as anybody wanting to rent their property out, in my view. So anybody can rent their property out for short periods without it triggering the need for a planning application. And that's the very basis of the Airbnb model. Where planning does get involved is where the character of the use, the intensity of the use, the regularity of the use, etc., takes it outside of the general classification as a dwelling house, or indeed in this case as an HMO, into a separate class of a holiday let. I think given that the principal purpose here is as an HMO, and my guess is for students and young professionals, it would only be open to use as a holiday let for shorter periods, then my guess is that that it wouldn't trigger a change of use to a holiday let or a party let. It will be the same level of activity that one might expect renting out their own property for short periods, again reflecting that sort of Airbnb model. So I don't think there's any fundamental issue that we can address through the planning process in relation to that holiday letting approach. Obviously, if the activity around holiday lets or party lets became an issue, then we could investigate that. But what you are granting here today is for use of the property as a 7-bed HMO, not a mixed use. Other issues, Chair, again, obviously in relation to the comments that have been made by the applicant about it being a family business, etc., and the way it's going to be managed and so on, I make this point many times before. You as a planning committee are granting the broader use as a property in multiple occupation. You don't have, as a planning committee, the luxury of imposing conditions about the particular type of management or the individual operator. However, there is that additional regulatory control through the HMO licensing process. And I'm not sure where we are with landlord licensing. Obviously, we had landlord licensing previously, but certainly there is additional control through the HMO licensing about the day-to-day management. So I'm not sure whether that addresses your concerns, Councillor Kennedy, but hopefully it provides you with a suitable answer.
Well, I only am.
Malcolm, I just wanted to say, I really like to win again. I just wanted to point out that we're often questioned as planning committee about our powers, and of course, what with the government withdrawing the landlord licensing scheme, my understanding is we're now going to reapply for it, but for certain areas in the city, it won't cover the whole city in the future. Yeah. And John's made it clear that we can't impose this condition, Malcolm, but do carry on with your follow-up.
The reason why I'm asking the question is it was the applicant that raised the issue of holiday lets rather than just, you know, whether it's the student accommodation, there's individual accommodation where people are using it as somewhere to live. He raised the question of holiday lets. He also said that he did not want to use it as part of, for a party base, so we have his word for that at the moment, and it would damage the value of his property to do that. It would seem to me that there's some wording that could be agreed between the applicant who doesn't want it to be used as a party base, the council who would not want it to be used as a party base. That would just add some extra protection in there. That's the reason I put it forward. It doesn't seem to me that the applicant is going to argue.
I absolutely understand your point, Councillor Kennedy. I think what I would emphasise is actually you're not granting a holiday let or a party let here through this application. What you're granting solely is an application for a property in multiple occupation. However, it is possible to use the property in a slightly different way, for example, as a holiday let, without there being a material change from that HMO, which you may or may not decide to grant today. The only control that we as officers have, as a local planning authority would have, is if those holiday lets evolve into something more substantial. So I think it's better to consider this as it's presented to you, as you are granting planning permission simply for the HMO, not for a party let. If it becomes something different in time, and local residents or ward councils make us aware of that, then we can investigate that and take appropriate action if that's possible. But there is nothing that's been submitted to us in this application that has suggested that it's to be used anything other than as an HMO. As I say, the first I've heard of a holiday let is this morning as part of that presentation.
Impose planning condition on this, but local monitor this issue, and if they feel the property is becoming substantially less as a holiday home, they can come back to planning over this issue. Yes, so I would like to move that the recommendation be approved. Is that agreed?
Thank you, Chair. Just taking the votes in the same order, please. Can I have your vote, Chair, please?
Agreed.
Councillor Conception.
Agreed.
Councillor Thompson.
Agreed.
Councillor Kennedy.
Unfortunately, I agree, but I hope that this will be kept looked at.
Thank you, that's noted. Councillor Mowat.
Agreed.
Councillor Juarez.
Against.
Against. Councillor Lavelle. Against, was that Tony? Sorry, can you repeat that, Tony? Against, okay. Thank you. So that's 5 votes in favour, 2 against that motion. That recommendation is approved. Councillor Juarez and Lavelle, do you want those votes recording?
Yes, please.
Okay. Councillor Lavelle? Okay, I can come back to that. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Now moving on to agenda items 12 and 13. I'd like to point out have already been considered by the Virtual Planning Committee at our meeting of the 30th of June. So it was resolved that a further report was to be submitted to the next available meeting to confirm the reasons for the refusal. So the report that you received this time includes a consideration of reasons for the refusal suggested by the members of the previous Virtual Planning Committee. So we'll go on first of all to agenda item 12. So we have a presentation for a representative of the applicant. So would Mr. Clarty want to address this, or are you just going to be here for questions?
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
This is Darren Muir here.
Darren Muir. Would you like to go ahead, Darren? Yes, I have got your name. Yep.
Yes, if that's okay. Mr. O'Flaherty will address the committee when I'm finished, if that's all right.
That's fine, yes.
So as I said, I'm a principal planner with Pegasus Group in Liverpool, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to address some of the concerns that were raised when both of these applications were first considered at the previous committee meeting. I know you've been provided with a full and robust case to justify approving the applications by the case officer, so I will not go through all of those matters with you again. However, I feel it is important that certain facts are clarified to help you make the right decision. The physical works at both 28 and 32 Granville Road were designed in such a way that they comply with relevant permitted development rights. Indeed, all physical works have now been completed. The properties can be used as HMOs for up to 6 occupiers, with the 7th empty bedroom under permitted development rights. Therefore, the main considerations of these applications is whether one additional occupier in each property will result in an unacceptable intensification of the use of the properties or a significant impact on neighbouring amenity. With regards to the intensification of the use, there are numerous 7 and 8 person HMOs in the vicinity, some of which are owned and operated by the applicant. The proposed layouts exceeds the required space standards for 7 person HMOs. Appropriate facilities for bicycle parking and waste storage form part of the planning submission. It is worth noting that there is no requirement to provide secure bicycle and bin storage if the properties were to be used as a C4 use class HMO for up to 6 occupiers under permitted development rights. It is considered highly unlikely that an inspector will accept an argument that the proposed use would result in an unacceptable intensification compared to a 6 person HMO, particularly as the original officer's report explained in detail why the proposal was acceptable and should be granted permission. With regards to impact on neighbouring amenity, as I've mentioned, the physical works have now been completed and are in accordance with permitted development rights. In the event of an appeal, the consideration will be whether one additional occupier in each property will have a significant negative impact on neighbouring amenity. This matter has been considered in several recent appeals, some of which were located near to Granville Road and have been referenced in the planning statements submitted in support of each application. In every case, the inspector has determined that one additional occupier above the fallback use as a 6-person HMO will not result in a significant impact on neighbouring amenity. Overall, we would consider it unreasonable to withhold planning permission and are confident that an appeal against the refusal of both applications would be successful. However, the applicant is keen to continue the proactive relationship with the council and would like to avoid any unnecessary appeals. It's therefore kindly requested that the committee reconsiders the amendment. And I'll now pass over to the applicant, who can tell you a little more about the work they do and the standards that they keep.
Hi everyone. I think the presentation was actually in the slightly wrong order. If we could start on that slide, that would be fantastic. So I'm Sam, I'm the applicant. Thanks a lot for having me along today. I'll keep what I've got to say brief, but I just wanted to start by giving you all a really quick background about our business and how we operate, and then end by speaking about the 2 properties in question. I moved to Liverpool 5 years ago. I fell in love with the city and I've lived and worked here ever since. During the past few years, myself and my business partner have invested significant sums into the local economy. We've completed tens of projects across Kensington and Wavertree. We have a strict rule of only ever employing local independent contractors. During our time, we've also taken 2 homeless men, John and Colin, under our wing. They were both sleeping rough when our main contractor took them on, and they've both been working on our sites for 3 years now, and both live in private rented accommodation. Next slide, please. I think you're all aware that the houses at 28 and 32 Granville Road are both student properties. The reason that we started doing what we do is that we felt there was a real lack of good quality student housing out there. And in the past few years, I think we've really raised the bar in terms of the quality of what's now on offer. All of our bedrooms are a good size with double beds, and we always go above and beyond in terms of our communal spaces. They really are significantly sized. We take an immense amount of pride in how we finish our properties, and they're always very much in demand. This allows us to vet groups before we rent to them and only choose groups that we feel are going to look after the properties for us. We educate our students the best we can on the fact that they're moving into a diverse community and the need for them to respect that. We operate a strict 3 strikes policy when it comes to any antisocial behaviour, and we also involve parents and the universities at an early stage if necessary. We always comply with bike and bin storage requirements, and our maintenance team inspect the properties on a regular basis to detect any problems early on. We've got a full-time lettings manager who's on call 24/7 for our students, and likewise any residents to contact should there be any issues. Next slide, please. We've got a bricks and mortar office that's just a short walk from Granville Road that people can walk to report any issues should they want to do so in person. Personally, I live less than 5 minutes away from the office and take a very active role in the day-to-day property management. I understand the concern for the committee a few weeks ago was the resident at 30 Granville Road, which I completely understand when seeing it on paper. 30 Granville is actually a Regenda Homes property. We're in touch with the team at Regenda, who have got all of our details. More importantly though, we are in touch with the lady that lives in the property at 30 Granville, that's Kim. I've met her personally a couple of times. She's got a direct contact number for myself, as well as I'm a senior contractor and also our lettings manager. You know, she can contact any of us anytime she likes, and we will always be at the other end of the phone. And that same principle applies to other residents in the area as well. That's all I really wanted to say. Thanks a lot for your time, everybody. I really appreciate it, especially towards the end of the agenda. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Councillor Kennedy?
Yeah.
Yes,
My
put your question, and then I'll take Councillor Conception after you. Carry on, Councillor Kennedy.
My question is, I mean, I've looked at the pictures there. They're obviously of a higher quality than people would normally be used to, and lots of the additional information you've given there has been encouraging. However, has the resident at number 30, what we've had is that you're in touch with the Regenda and you're in touch with the resident. Has the resident withdrawn her objection?
I'll ask the case officer, has the resident withdrawn her objection?
Not to my knowledge, Chair.
Thank you. So can we now bring in Councillor Conception, please?
Thanks, Chair. Could I ask Sam? I mean, my concern was in relation to the occupants of number 30. And that was the reason I think the committee took the decision they did, and the implications of living between two HMOs full of students. Would you, Sam, be happy living in a house sandwiched by HMOs full of students? Yes or no?
Well, I think the point to consider here, Tony, is that under permitted development, that there are we have the ability for the house to be a 6-bed student house, which it will be regardless. Now it's been built and finished as so. Much like James, who spoke on the previous agenda item, we go above and beyond in terms of our spec, our insulation, noise cancelling, plasterboard, so on and so forth. So we do everything we possibly can to reduce the impact on residents that live in nearby terraces. So that's the best I can answer that one, Tony.
Any other questions? Because I'd now like to invite in a Councillor Abdul Kadir again, who'd like to speak.
Once again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this agenda item, the two items in front of you. This, for me, is a more concerning issue from the perspective of number 30. And again, we've just heard as well, but confirmed to us by the case officer that they haven't withdrawn their objection. So that must be taken into account. I don't think the committee is able to judge whether sufficient insulation is there, what kind of spec, because I don't think you have that in front of you. So really, that's just an objective opinion, and I don't think you can put much weight to it unless you have the specific detail of what insulation you have there. So I'd like you to not consider that at all. In terms of the officer, and you've seen in the report that there is grounds for objection, which was clearly stated in front of you. So I would urge you to use that grounds to object to this application for the mental and well-being of the residents in number 30, but also the impact, as I've stated previously on the previous application, which I'm not going to go into, and I know it's late in the day for you to hear me all over again. But again, I submit what I've said before in terms of the impact on the area, the impact and the associated impact on the perceived crime and disorder and ASB. The applicant has said that they've got an office that is contactable, but in my experience and the residents' experience who come to me complaining that they do not get heard by the developer when they raise any concern. So I will use that as my evidence in terms of listening to the residents themselves. I fully accept that the applicant has invested heavily in the area, which generally I would welcome any kind of development, any kind of investment in the area. But however, when it comes to the fact that it undermines the stability of the community, which these HMOs are doing, the mental and physical impact of residents, you've got to imagine yourself in their shoes. You know, you've got two houses, both sides, highly occupied. That you talk about the amenity, communal amenity, which is the kitchen and living room. In my point of view, it is impractical for 7 people to sit in that small kitchen and dining room for a lengthy time, and therefore will result in them actually spending more time in their bedrooms, which again will have a greater impact on the neighbouring residents due to noise, due to the TV, and so on. So again, I would urge the committee to refuse this application based on the information in front of them.
Hi.
Okay. Any questions for Abdul Qadir? Councillor Juarez.
Morning, Councillor Qadir. Thank you for speaking up for your community. Now, I know the area quite well, where you represent around Smith Down area. Have you, as a councillor, could you enlighten me a little bit? You know, I know that those houses are not that big. You know, they were traditionally built for a family of 4 or 3. It's a 3-bedroom house. They're all quite modest. Do you have problems, like, for example, when a house goes up for sale, you know, are you finding it hard for traditional young people or small families sort of trying to get on the housing market, because, you know, you state that, you know, the area is being driven aggressively by developers trying to acquire as many properties because they just want to, you know, acquire those properties to be able to make money from. Are you finding it difficult at keeping the community together where people are not moving in? Families are not moving in, or couples who are looking to start families, they're looking to get the foot on the ladder. So, I mean, how are you finding it? I mean, it must be quite difficult because, you know, in certain areas where you've got people living 7, 8 in one house, you know, what are the residents that have been living there, say, for example, the last 20 years, are they finding it difficult? Do they want to leave? Are they quite, you know, how can you just give us a bit of feedback of how people actually feel in those communities living there with this, what's going on, you know, where their next door house could potentially, when it comes up for sale, it's going to be so aggressively be bidded on.
Excuse me, Councillor Juarez, I really think you're leading questions here. If Councillor Qadir would like to come back.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Juarez. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Juarez. That was a really good question there, where it really, as I said to you previously, the community is being eroded, and it's being eroded by individual developers who are targeting this area as a profit-driven focus, not as a benefit to the community. In regards to your question about families, I do know, and I speak to a lot of families who want to live in the area at one time where the area used to be a really lovely family orientated and supported area, are finding it difficult to buy these developments. Why? Because the intensity and the harshness of the developers' drive to actually be there first, and potentially in some instances even pay above market value for these houses, drive out the families, because when an individual has been sandwiched, has lived intensely in an area where they feel pressured, they feel threatened in terms of the crime and perceived crime, they have no choice but to put their house on for sale. As a result, individuals, developers come online to pay the higher price, and then restricting individual families from actually residing in these areas. There is a high demand of family houses in our ward, and it continues to be a high demand. However, we are not helping in creating a sustainable community through our, you know, we have a duty of care as councillors, as planning committee, to make sure that we have a diverse community here. And I feel that we are not meeting that requirement?
Let's look at here. We need to make it very clear that the measures the planning committee are attempting to take over this are being done through the local plan, and that there is the facility for getting Article 4 directives as well. But I know that that's out to consideration, this policy through a committee that's looking at this policy. But we have to act. This is a quasi-judicial committee. We have to act within the laws of the land over planning. And you have cited on several occasions about crime. Before we could refuse an application on the basis of crime, and I will hand back to my case officer and take advice from our chief planner who we have here, we have to have proof. We have to have statistics about crime. So I am going to now hand back to the case officer to comment. I'm not going to invite Darren Muir to speak because we only have questions at this point from the planning committee members, and then they can be answered by our officers. So can I go back to you, John? And if Samantha Campbell would like to come in as well, I would welcome her to do so. So John, over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a reminder again of those comments made by Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Smader in relation to the previous item also relate to this application and the next application. Obviously, my comments relate to both these applications, items 12 and 13, but obviously in terms of process, you as a planning committee will need to vote individually on each particular planning application. Nonetheless, they are obviously closely related, particularly insofar as they impact on the property in the middle. So just to pick up on some of the points by Councillor Kadir in relation to that crime issue, you're absolutely right, Chair. In order to demonstrate that there was a particular problem, higher crime rate, we would need to have the statistics, and we would also need to have the evidence of Merseyside police. We'd also need to demonstrate that this particular proposal would exacerbate or cause additional problems over and above that of the existing levels, and I think that is an almost impossible objective to achieve. So whilst I do understand the concerns, there isn't that evidence that's been presented, certainly through this or other applications, that there is a particularly problematic issue with crime in and around that area, over and above that you might have associated with a sort of base level without the HMOs. The second point that I would simply make, Chair, is in relation to the sort of comments made by the applicant around the management of the property and so on. And again, that's obviously welcome to hear, and it's a point that was picked up by Councillor Kennedy. However, again, I would say, as in with the previous application, this planning committee can only consider the broad principles of an HMO. You don't have the luxury as a committee of the individual management regime or the individual operators for the HMOs being controlled. Again, that's a matter for the licensing side of things. And then the final point, Chair, is obviously you've got a report in front of you in relation to this and the next item. You as a committee were very clear in your views that the scheme was unacceptable, both in relation to this and the next item, and you put forward a number of reasons for refusal. They were broadly relating to the impact on amenity of the particular occupier, the over-concentration, if you like, on the wider impact from HMOs in and around the area, and then lastly, some concerns about the internal layout. You'll see from the report, Chair, that we've narrowed the issues down to the main issue around amenity. I think your officer's view is, if you are minded to go against the head of planning's recommendation here, and confirm the previous resolution of the committee, then officers would suggest that you concentrate purely on that issue of amenity and the impact arising from the additional occupants of the properties. Hope that's clear, Chair. Obviously happy to answer any further questions that you might have. Thank you.
I'll invite further questions now. Councillor Kennedy.
Thanks for that advice, John. I mean, clearly, there is only one issue here, and that is the impact on that residence. I don't think it's good enough argument when people come and say, well, you could have an HMO for 6 or under. There's a reason for the 6. And once it goes above that 6, you know, if it was so acceptable, people could just say, right, as long as it's 7 or under, or 8 or under, or 9 or under. There's a reason for the level being 6. And yes, the lady at number 30 can have a 6-bedroom HMO on one side and a 6-bedroom HMO on the other side, and we have no say in that whatsoever, and that's fine. I realise the limitations that we're asking about. The problem here is that it is the amenity of that one person that is at issue here. And I haven't had enough reason. Give me more reason to change my mind from the previous meeting. And don't say, well, it's only one more person.
Thank you, Chair. I feel the same as Councillor Kennedy, that, you know, I'm still not satisfied that the residential amenity at number 30 is improved from the last time that we refused this application. You know, 14 residents in the 2 neighbouring properties is still just too much. 12 is still too much, and you know, it seems that, you know, we are in a position where, you know, I think government has got the policy wrong, and we can't do that much about it now. But you know, I still feel that that residents' amenity of disturbance and noise is still it still hasn't been addressed. I mean, I just I don't feel any different from today's presentation to the way I felt when you know, to when this application first came in. So I still do feel that that poor resident at number 30 is just is not going to benefit at all, you know, from where she lives. She's going to be stuck there, you know, with 12 people probably living there at least.
Right, well, thank you everyone for your reflections and questions. However, coming back on this, we have got more information this time, in my opinion. We have been assured by the agent and applicant that there would be sound insulation installed, that they have got an office that people can complain to, and that they do have a process of vetting and supervising their students. And because I've had a number of children who've been students at university, I'm very impressed by landlords in every case who have been pretty proactive. And I think that Mr. O'Flaherty is trying his best to be proactive. We are considering just one more person in this particular property. So I'm going to move that the recommendation be approved and ask, will you agree with me?
Look, I'll move the amendment. Councillor Hanson isn't here to move it again. I'll move it this time.
Chair, I think Councillor Hanson is present.
Yes, I was expecting him to come in at 11. He did say so. So is Councillor Kennedy or Councillor Hanson going to
Councillor
move?
Hanson is here. If you care to look at what's on the screen, you will see me on the screen. But unfortunately, I only come in halfway through this discussion, so I'm not unable
I'm
to vote.
asking the question, who's moving the amendment, please? That's what I want.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thanks for recognising that I've joined the meeting, Chair. Very grateful for that.
I'll move the amendment relating to the amenity of that one resident.
Also happy to second
Is that Anthony Lavelle second?
Councillor Lavelle is seconding. Councillor Suarez, I think you had your hand up to second, but Councillor Lavelle is seconding.
Okay, Chair, so we're going to vote on the amendments. Is everyone clear what the amendment is before I take the vote? Okay.
Peter, can I just make it clear for members? Just sorry to interrupt here. So the recommendation that's before you is obviously the original recommendation of the head of planning, and that's the recommendation that's moved by the chair. The planning permission be granted, and obviously the amendment to that is that the original resolution of the planning committee to refuse it be upheld for the reasons set out in the further report before you. So I think it's just that sort of slightly nuanced point that it's you would be, I think, amending it on the grounds that are suggested in the further report on the agenda papers, so that the proposed 7-bed HMO, by reason of its increased residential occupancy, would constitute an unacceptable intensification of use, etc. Just wanted to clarify that point. Sorry, Peter.
No, that's fine, Chair. Sorry, John, thank you. Okay, so we're voting on the recommendation first then. So can I have the Chair, please? This is on the amendments, I'm sorry.
I object.
So you're against, okay. Councillor Conception?
HMOs are always difficult when it comes to this committee. But we're always told that we have to vote on each individual application. And in the circumstances and the effect on the residents of number 30 and the impact on the residential amenity of that particular tenant, I'm going to vote in favour of the amendment.
Okay. Councillor Thompson?
Against the amendment.
Okay. Councillor Kennedy?
For the amendment.
Councillor Marrett?
The amendment.
Sorry, can you say that again, please?
For the amendment.
For the amendment, thank you. Councillor Wells?
For the amendment.
Councillor Lavelle?
For the amendment.
Okay, and that's it, because I think Councillor Hanson said he just joined halfway through. So, okay, so that is 5 in favour of the amendments, 2 against. So the amendment is carried. Thank you.
So that means that we have refused
Yep.
application number 12. So we now move on to agenda item 13, which is for 32 Granville Road. And I think that it's fair to say that all the comments have been received from the applicant, from the local councillor, and from the case officer in this case. But if anybody feels they want to add any comments about agenda item 13, I will take them now. Okay, so I haven't got any comments coming through. So I'm going to again move that the recommendation be approved. In other words, that the planning consent is given for a 7-bedroom HMO.
So I think we have,
Kennedy.
I'll have to move the same amendment.
okay, is Councillor Lavelle want to second that again? Thank you. Okay, Chair, do you want me to take the vote now?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So voting on the amendments, Chair?
I'm against the amendment.
Against, thank you. And Councillor Conception?
For.
Councillor Thompson?
Against.
Councillor Kennedy? Obviously.
For.
Councillor Marrett? Councillor Lavelle.
4.
Councillor Wallace.
4.
Thank you. So once again, it's 5 in favour of the amendment and 2 against, Chair. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time and attendance today, everybody. And I'd like to remind you that we have another planning committee at similar time next week, because we started a bit late this week. I'd like to start promptly at 9:45, if we can, next week. But it wasn't due to the attendance of our planning members that started late. There were a few technical issues. So
Chair, can I just say that Councillor Shortall seems to want to come in on something. He's just raised his hand. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, well, I think with the permission of the planning members, we can hear from Councillor Shortall, but he isn't actually a planning committee member.
Correct.
So, members, would you like us to take a comment from Councillor Shortall? Is that acceptable? Everybody seems to agree. So, Councillor Shortall, would you like to come in?
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Chair. I just wanted it noted for the minutes that I have attended the meeting as an observer. That's it.
Oh,
Thank
okay,
you.
that's fine. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and see you next week.
Thank you for that. Can I request that the live stream is, James, can you stop the live stream at this point, please?